Coming up on this episode of the NHL at the Rink podcast, we got Eddie Olczyk from TNT, talking all things playoffs, breaking down matchups, storylines, and the like. Sean and I talk wild card races. It's not done yet. We hit on the Carolina Hurricanes, New Jersey Devils, our Stanley Cup final picks, and more. All of that coming up on this episode of the NHL at the Rink podcast.
NHL at the Rink is presented by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
Welcome into another episode of the NHL at the Rink podcast. It's brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip. This is the last NHL at the Rink podcast of the 2024-25 regular season. Sean Rourke, my co-host, welcome to the show. We are 3 sleeps away from the Stanley Cup playoffs as we record this on Wednesday.
Dan, you scared the living daylights out of me when you said it was the last episode. I thought you knew something I didn't know. Maybe it was my last episode. Maybe you found a replacement for me. I don't know. But thank God you clarified and said regular season because, yes, the playoffs do start on Saturday. The second season, the beginning of the marathon towards winning what we all consider the best and hardest trophy in all of sports to win. And it's going to be amazing, but it's not over yet. Right, we still have Montreal playing tonight, looking for a point. If they don't get it, Columbus plays tomorrow night, looking for 2 points and taking that 8th spot in the East. And even though we don't know what's going to happen, look, the race to the end has been unbelievable. When you look out west, right, St. Louis and Minnesota won last night. Minnesota wins on a crazy goal, and then in overtime, Marc-Andre Fleury making a surprise appearance. All of that, you know, St. Louis had to win 12 games in a row at one point just to get back in. So there was a real push in the West, and Calgary, bravo to Calgary. They took it all the way to the second to last game of the season before they finally capitulated. So, and now you have the same situation in the East. And when you think about it, like, there's so much parity. This is the 3rd year in a row that at least one team is going to clinch its berth in the playoffs on the last game of the season for them. Yeah. That's crazy.
No, it is. It's been a lot of fun the end of this season. Before we go any further, by the way, we are bringing it today because we have just a great guest, Eddie Olczyk, the great Eddie Olczyk. TNT is going to be calling the playoffs with Kenny Albert and Brian Boucher there on TNT. He joins us. We go all through a lot of West too, because remember Eddie is now based out of Seattle, calls games for the Seattle Kraken with John Forsland. He knows the West really, really well. That interview with Edzo is coming up soon here. But Sean, to your point, you're right. So we can dive into all the teams, the Maple Leafs clinching top seed there in the Atlantic, and a great battle of Ontario coming up. The Tampa Bay Lightning and Florida Panthers in the Battle of Florida, the Battle of the State. We know about the top 3 in the Central: Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado. You got Carolina, New Jersey's been set for a while. Washington still awaiting their opponent right now. But I'm gonna tell you, man, the finish here for the wild card, so much different than a year ago. Think about the East wild card a year ago. You had the Capitals who got it, but really we knew at that time one of those 2 teams, Washington, Detroit, right? They were backing their way in, and it was all thought to be fodder for the New York Rangers, who were the top seed, the President's Trophy winner. And that's really what happened. The Capitals got in. I think it was with 91 points. They were a minus 37 goal differential. They were all beat up, and they were out in a week. Right? 4 games, weren't very close. They were out in a week. This year, you've got the Columbus Blue Jackets just screaming up to the top, 5 wins in a row, keeping it, relevant as we speak right now on Wednesday afternoon. You got the upstart Montreal Canadiens who, they're struggling the last little bit to finish the job here. Maybe they do. But at least it's been a ton of fun to watch them get through. 2 upstart teams, 2 teams that are just, trying to get back in there, trying to get in the mix. It's been so much different, and it's been so fun to watch. And then you're right, out west, St. Louis, 12 wins in a row. Minnesota, I'm going to give full marks here to Minnesota. They had to hold off the Calgary Flames. Flames came in, and the Minnesota Wild, 3-2 wins in overtime against Vancouver and Anaheim. I think they've won 4 of their last 5 games. They get Kaprizov back. They look like a different team. I don't know that they have enough to beat Vegas in the first round, but but they got in. They earned their way in. 45 wins for a team that didn't have Kaprizov for half a season. That's really good stuff there, and great coaching job by John Hines. It just seems to me that the wild card races this year were just so much more exciting than last year. It's at least certainly for the East.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's going to serve them better. I mean, look, you talk about Washington and how they went from the 8 to the top seed this year. But they did that by retooling, right? When I look at the Canadians and the Blue Jackets, it's the young cores that are carrying them and brought them here early. Like when we started the year, like we always do, we talked about the Detroit Red Wings and the Buffalo Sabres and the Ottawa Senators. And Ottawa's the only team that did what they were supposed to do and finally take that step. And now the Canadians with their young core and Columbus with their young core have passed those other teams, right? And one of them is going to make it and gain invaluable experience, but the other ones already gained that experience in just getting to this point. Like I think it's going to be a slingshot into next year because it's not like you're going to be the Washington Capitals and you're going to retool and try and get to the top. Like you're still building. Like you look at the Montreal Canadiens in the last week, right? They get Demidov. He makes an unbelievable debut. Who knows what he's going to do tonight, right? And then you look at Columbus and where all their guys have come from, all their young guys, and you look at those two teams and you're like, the future is really bright, and it's brighter than we thought it was going to be, faster than we thought it was going to be.
Columbus is the team that I really want to look at here, Sean, because we know like the season they've had it's been. We talked about it going into the Stadium Series game, whether they get in or not, right? We talked about it going into the Stadium Series game a month and a half ago about how they were writing the best story of any team in the National Hockey League, and they win that Stadium Series, and it was so incredible, the emotion around that game. And then it seemed like they ran out of gas, right? It just looked like, okay, that team put all it had to get to that point, being a relevant team, and they did. And then they just ran out of gas. They went 4-11-1 in their next 16 games. They were 8 points out of a playoff spot 10 days ago. Well, they've won 5 in a row. They've put it back together. They got Adam Fantilli, who's got 30 goals right now. 5 of their top 8 or 6 of their top 8 forwards in scoring are all 24 or younger. You are so right in this. Get in or not get in for the Blue Jackets. Obviously, it'll be a disappointment if they don't, because of that stretch in March. I love the term you just used, a slingshot into next season. This is a team to be reckoned with right now. They will be a team to be reckoned with. And I'm going to tell you, we don't know because we're recording right now. Whichever one of these two teams does get in, look out, because the Washington Capitals are not playing great hockey right now. The Washington Capitals have a little bit of an injury situation with Alexei Protas out. Logan Thompson's hurt. They've put a lot into getting to this point too, and they've been a steady, consistent, very good team all season long. But until they beat the Islanders, they had lost 7 of their previous 10 games. Beat the Islanders Tuesday night at UBS Arena. It hasn't gone very well for Washington. That's going to be a dangerous series for them. I don't know yet we don't know who's going to get in, so it's hard to make a prediction on it right now. And I don't know that I would pick against Washington regardless who the opponent is, but that to me spells trouble for Washington in that first round, simply because you're playing these two upstart teams. You're going to play one of these two upstart teams, and that team has really had to battle its way in.
Yeah, both those teams are playing playoff hockey, right? They've been playing game 7s forever. To stay alive. So they're in playoff mode, right? And I think Washington is the furthest thing from playoff mode. They had everything locked up for so long. They've been wrapped up in the great chase and Ovi breaking the record. And they've always kind of had an excuse, oh, well, it's all about Ovi right now. We'll get our game back. And there's no magic switch. Carberry, their coach Carberry, he can't walk in that room today and say, okay, boys, it's the playoffs now. Now we get back to Washington Capital hockey. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, you have to find your way back and you have to show it on the ice. And they really haven't yet. And we don't know what's going to happen But if you don't think Washington's thinking about the 2 beatings that Columbus put on them this week as
Yeah.
part of that 5-game win streak, you're silly.
100% right. So we'll see where that goes. But you're right about that, because like it's your reason what you just said about Washington. You can't just flip that switch to get to when you get to the playoffs. You can have experience and you can know what you're in for and what you're up against and what to expect and how it goes and how those games go. And look, Columbus and Montreal and Ottawa and these teams, they don't have that, right? They don't have that. Maybe that plays to their advantage, but that's another reason why I'm like concerned about the Florida Panthers, right? They haven't been 3-6-1 in their last 10 games. I have concern about the Edmonton Oilers. They don't, I mean, a lot of injuries. McDavid's been out. Draisaitl's been out. Hyman's been out, right? We know that Matthias Ekholm's going to be out for the first round. But then you look at the Los Angeles Kings, their opponent. They're riding a 4-game win streak. They're dominant at home. I look at the Kings and I say, that's really a dangerous team. I look at the Senators and I say, that's really a dangerous team. Although, full marks to the Toronto Maple Leafs, by the way. I mean, maybe they are different. They have to prove it. We'll talk a little bit more about that with Edzo. But I look at those teams. You're playing well, and you're playing with that energy going into the playoffs, where I don't see it necessarily from Florida. I don't see it from Washington. I don't see it from Edmonton. And those are 3 teams we look at and say, wouldn't be surprised at all if they go on a long run. Dallas is another one. Losing games recently, like it's been a struggle to the finish line for the Dallas Stars. That's the things you have to look at, I think, as we think about the playoff shifting from the regular season into the postseason is, these are veteran teams and whatnot, but there's concern. There's warts. Those warts have been coming out. And now it's like, can you get it back? Can you get it back on track? I don't know that Matthew Tkachuk getting back in the game for the Florida Panthers is enough for them, right? Against the team in Tampa. I don't know that that's going to be enough. I don't know that having McDavid rested and Draisaitl rested is going to be enough for the Edmonton Oilers against a very good LA Kings team. So those are little areas I think are they're massive right now as we start the playoffs. A week from now, we could be talking a completely different thing because they've proven us wrong.
Yeah, I look, it certainly is hard to project, right? But when you talk about all those teams, the one that I'm least nervous about are the Florida Panthers, right? Matthew Tkachuk went on TV today or last night or somewhere and said he's looking at game 1, right? And I think if he goes on and he says, I'm looking at game 1, he's going to play in game 1 and he's going to be a difference maker. Brad Marchand scored last night. He's playing like Brad Marchand again, almost like he's healthy, right? Because he went to the Florida Panthers hurt. Aaron Ekblad comes back in game 3. And they're built for the postseason, right? You just look up and down their lineup and you're like, these are playoff guys, right? And so I completely throw out last night, Tampa Bay just gave it to them, just fed them. But that wasn't playoff Florida. And I think Florida is the one team that can flip the switch because they've done it for 2 years now. Like they understand what the playoffs are, and at their very core, their very DNA, it's who they are. So they're the team I'm least worried about. It's a horrible matchup for them, right? Because Tampa Bay is just a wagon right now. I think Vasilevsky is every bit as good as Connor Hellebuck, and I know a lot of people will give me stick about that, but I do believe that if you look at their numbers, they're not markedly different, and I think that Tampa Bay plays a much looser system than Connor Hellebuck's team does. Gensel is just scoring at will. Kucherov's going to win the scoring title, and everybody's going to say he's the 10th best player in the league. So, they're a really good team, and it's not the draw you want to have. It's great for TV. The Battle of Florida is going to be just as good as the Battle of Ontario. And this is the 3rd time in 4 years they've met in the playoffs. And there is a legitimate rivalry there. There's legitimate hate there. On ice hate. The 2 teams respect each other as much as 2 teams can respect each other, but when they drop the puck, there's not a lot of light going on.
All right, quickly, because I want to get to Edzo, but I'm going to counter what you said about Florida. They are the team I'm most worried about going into the playoffs. For yes, Matthew Tkachuk could be back. Is he compromised? Aaron Ekblad missing the first 2 games. Those are important games. They're going to be on the road in Tampa. It could be 2-0 by the time he comes back into this series. The idea was that Seth Jones and Aaron Ekblad would eat all the minutes on the right side. They don't have that for the games 1 and 2. And Ekblad hasn't played in 20 games. Matthew Tkachuk hasn't played in 25 games. You just said you can't. We talked about how you can't flip the switch, right? That's hard. They don't have the game ready stamina coming back in that they're going to need. And on top of all that, the numbers that stick out to me: 291 games in 917 days. That's how many games the Florida Panthers have played since the start of the 2022-23 season. It's more than any other team in the league. It's almost a game every 3 days. And that's with 2 off seasons built into that, okay? I worry about the Florida Panthers for those reasons. Could they win? Could they prove me wrong? Could I eat my words? Absolutely, because like you said, they're built to win in the playoffs. I understand that. This is the wrong opponent for them. This is just the wrong time to be facing the Tampa Bay Lightning, who, by the way, lost to them in the first round last year and are going to be a little angry about that coming into this series with home ice advantage too. And they're better, they're deeper, their goaltending is as good, if not better, and they have arguably the best player in the series in Nikita Kucherov.
And how many times did we say that about the team that Florida was playing in the last 2 years?
I know. It's different though. To me, this is different. This is a lot of hockey in a shorter period of time with guys who have been out for a long period of time. That's what makes it different for me.
We disagree. We almost always disagree. We rarely have the luxury of a tiebreaker, but we do now. And it's a man who knows more about hockey than both of us combined will ever know. He's played in the league. He's coached in the league. He's commentated on the league. He works for TNT right now, and he'll be doing the playoffs. It's the great Eddie Olczyk. But before we get to him, here's a word from Skip.
Free food, beauty. Skip 60 to scores here. Get even more wins during the Stanley Cup playoffs. How to play, you ask? Place a game day order to play. Pick your team and get your minute. If either team scores during that time, you score a $25 Skip voucher. Order and play 60 to score in the Skip app to take your shot. Now until May 19th. Get her one. Edzo, thanks so much for joining us. So how's the season been? This is our last podcast of the regular season, the first time we're having you on. How's it been, man?
Well, first off, who canceled on you? That's what I want to know. This is an EJ Radic move right here. There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
Oh, I got to deal with him later.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, first off, great to be with you guys. It's been great. It's, last night especially. I mean, watching, trying to watch all the games last night, but just off the cuff. I mean, watching the Leafs game and seeing Mitch Marner. Of course, I'm the other number 16 that over the years that wore that sweater in Toronto a long time ago. To see him get 100 points, to see Auston Matthews get get his 400th in his NHL career, and then just flipping around and seeing what it was taking place in St. Paul with the late goal by Eriksson Ek, and then all of a sudden here comes the Flower. I call him the Kid because I was lucky enough to be in Pittsburgh at that time and be his coach. And when he came into the National Hockey League back in 03-04, and to see him get the win and the reception he got, Matt Martin last night, getting the respect that he deserved, not only from the people at UBS Arena, but also the Capitals as well. Robert Bortuzzo in St. Louis, a member of the Utah Hockey Club, he got acknowledged. It was just a memorable day, and I think it got kicked off in one of the better goodbye speeches that I've seen. Logan Couture was phenomenal. I don't know how he kept it together. I've talked to him a handful of times over the years, Danny and Sean, but I was feeling for him, it was just, it was an unbelievable day in the National Hockey League, and everything I mentioned there had nothing, really nothing to do with I mean, the outcomes of games. I mean, obviously, I mean, the Flower getting a win there, and with the Wild and them clinching a playoff spot, but just an amazing day, and just so proud to still be a part of this league all these years later. So just it was a great day for hockey. The late Bob Johnson, Badger Bob, he would be smiling down because it was a great day for hockey yesterday.
And now they're only going to get better. We get through what should be a dramatic night tonight in Montreal, and then maybe a dramatic one in Columbus if Montreal can't finish the deal, and then we move on to the playoffs. I want to start where you started. You talked about the Toronto Maple Leafs and Marner getting 100 and Matt getting 40. They win the division, the first time that they've won the Atlantic. They get the better seed, supposedly the easier path through the conference. What do you think about this Maple Leaf team when it gets to the playoffs? Are they different?
I believe they are, Sean. When Craig Berube was hired back in the middle of the summer, and he had lots of options. There were a handful of teams, and I think a couple of them were probably a little slow to react, and the Maple Leafs were there. And I just kind of felt with the moves, you kind of felt that we're coming on the back end, and obviously getting Tanev and getting OEL on the back end. That really, you need experience. You need guys that have been through the gauntlet, so to speak. I felt that they could make a run. Like I said back then, that I would be disappointed as if they didn't get to the conference finals this year. Look, it's a difficult task. I mean, you need a little bit of luck. You got to stay healthy. You need your big guys to show up, and you got to get the most important thing, and that's goaltending. Because if you get it, you got a shot. If you don't, as the great Doc Emrick, my longtime partner, or I'm his longtime partner with NBC for so many years. I think almost 14 years with the legendary Doc Emrick. We would say, when you get it, you got a shot, and when you don't get goaltending, you got no shot to win. And I think for the Leafs, they've, at least to this point, they've gotten good goaltending. They've gotten very good goaltending at times. Stolarz is on a nice little run here going to the playoffs. So I believe is that that they have the ability, they have the coach. I think they have the team in place. And now you got to go and get the job done. And yeah, there's a lot of pressure. There's no doubt. But they got to find a way to take on an arch rival in Ottawa. And Ottawa's been playing really well here the last 25 games or so, and it should be a real emotional. But I expect the Leafs to make a serious run this year.
What do you think what will make Ottawa such a challenge for Toronto? We know it'll be Brady Tkachuk's first time in the playoffs, and he's going to just, we know he's going to run out like a bull in a china shop. That's obvious, right? We know that's going to happen. But what else will make Ottawa a challenge for Toronto?
Well, I mean, I think the physicality, and they have the ability to play with speed, Danny. I mean, they do. They have the ability to push the pace. One guy that's had an unbelievable season this year has been, I want to say very underrated, because he's been a tremendous player for a long, long time. Claude Giroux, he had an unbelievable season. I don't care what the numbers are. I don't when you watch Ottawa play, he seems to be right in the middle of everything that they got going on. We know how great he's been in the face-off dot. I think I checked maybe 6 days ago. He was, he was either number one or he was 1A, but he's played unbelievable, and he's got that experience. So I think the physicality part, them playing fast. Now, I think, the discipline part of not getting caught up in trying to really, play on the line is okay. But I think crossing the line and not feeding, and I think it goes on both sides, but I think more from Ottawa's point of view, I think that they want to, you want to play 5-on-5 and give yourself a chance, and finish all your checks and, play whistle to whistle. I'm sure for Travis Green and his staff, I'm sure those are reminders, but you're going to get all lathered up when you come out for that puck drop, whenever they decide to play and start that series, whether it's Sunday night or not. But, it's going to be a tough series. It is going to be a tough series. People now, they want, well, what do you think? 5 games, 6 games. I expect Ottawa to win a couple of games. I just think that's hockey. I think for me, it's the physicality and speed that they can play with, and make sure that they're staying out of the penalty box.
Let me ask you this, as a player and a coach, you'd be able to speak to it. You look at the Ottawa team, and you're right, they've played really well. Their core, I think it's 6 out of their top 9 scorers have all grown up together in Ottawa. They've never been in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They're all 25 or younger. What is it like as a first timer walking into that? Like, is that going to be a factor? Is experience that important? Or are they just so blind that it's actually going to benefit them?
No, I think you could probably ride in on that momentum, Sean. I think to the heart of your question. I mean, I could just speak from experience. I mean, look, I was a Chicago kid. I got drafted by my hometown team in 1984, and there we are in the playoffs in 1985. And I was the youngest guy on our team, and I was relying on the veteran guys on that team. The Dennis Savards, the Steve Larmer, Al Secord, Doug Wilson, Daryl Sutter, Tommy Lysiak, Troy Murray, Kurt Frazier. I mean, I was, I think I couldn't believe, how much the game went from here to here, even back then. Contrary to what my kids think, that the game was, kind of slow and it just got a little quicker, back in the day. But I think that, it can affect some players and feel like, oh my gosh, I can't make a play, or I'm just going to get rid of the puck. And maybe you do think a little bit, but I think once you get into it and a wave, to your point, Sean, of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys that are, getting a taste of it for the very first time. But then that's where you look to your guys on that bench and inside that locker room that have played in the playoffs. And like I said, I started off with Claude Giroux, or when I was talking about Ottawa, mentioning Claude Giroux. I mean, that's a perfect guy there that, I know will help those young players, and look at a guy like Tim Stützle or Brady Tkachuk and just, kind of quick couple of words and just, let them, play to your strengths. And it technically it is another game, but I think that's the mindset that we all know how important it is, and you just don't know. And I think that's something you have to learn. You have to live and learn, is that you don't know when that opportunity or that tide will turn, not only a game, but it can turn a series. And when you think about turning the tide of a series, I mean, that's history, right? So, I mean, you don't want to look at it as, oh my gosh, if something happens here, history has changed forever. But you don't know when that's going to be. And it doesn't even mean a goal or an assist by your best offensive player. It might be a back check. It might be a shot block. It might be a great change that allows somebody to get on the ice and get an opportunity the other way. So I think as a young player, once you get your first couple of shifts in there, I mean, the worst part is going to be in between now and puck drops. I mean, we're talking about Ottawa in particular, but any young player or any team that has had a difficult, time getting to the playoffs and finally get there, or a team that's pressure, Toronto's got, like I said, Toronto's got a boatload of pressure. We understand that. But this is the worst time now, is just, waiting and getting to that opportunity to drop the puck for real.
Experience is not going to be a factor if you look on the other side of that bracket with Florida and Tampa Bay, but there are other factors at play. I'm just curious. I mean, the Panthers back-to-back times in the Stanley Cup final, lost one, won it last year. What do you make of them right now? What do you think of the Florida Panthers right now?
Man, they can't score, can they? I mean, for a team. Now, look, I get it. I mean, we know, obviously, with Matthew Tkachuk, and then obviously the situation with Aaron Ekblad, being out for the first 2 games of the playoffs from being suspended. I mean, 2 important guys for sure, without a doubt, but just not able to finish. Would I ever think that I would be talking about the Florida Panthers, a team that, to be able to seem like they just scored at will early in the year? And I mean, the last couple of years, it seemed like every game was 5 or 6 goals. And but they play a lot of hockey. I mean, they really have. So it puts a lot of pressure on Bob. There is no doubt about that. But again, not hearing or not knowing what's going on, and what Paul Maurice's latest comments have been on Matthew Tkachuk. You get him back in there. Obviously, he is a major difference maker, and in getting Aaron Ekblad back. Now, again, 2 games is 2 games. I mean, it's not like you're jumping in on a moving freight on a Acela or something. But get him back there. That's certainly going to make a big difference, not only defensively but on the offensive side of it. So, but can you just turn it on? It's a different game. They're built for the playoffs. We know that the team that they have assembled, and obviously you have experience. You have guys that are proven winners and a coach that knows what he's doing. So, to me, Danny, it would just be, can they find that offensive swagger that kind of has seemed to kind of go and eluded them here for, I'm just going to look at, without looking at the numbers, but just off of memory, I would say for at least 10 or 12 games where it's, like they haven't been scoring at what they've been doing here recently.
So let's switch out west, and I think the most interesting story out west is we every week we do our power rankings and the top 16 teams, and I think for me 4 out of the first 5 teams were in the West, and 3 of them are in the Central. Who gets out of there? Not to put you on the spot, Eddie, but who gets out of there?
I mean, look, you're right. It's a gauntlet. Like it's just unbelievable. Now, look, obviously there's got to be some concern in Dallas right now, Sean. Even when they were on their hot streak, they weren't playing all that great. I remember having a conversation with Peter DeBoer. Actually, for TNT, we'll be there on Saturday night in Dallas for Game 1 between the Stars and the Avs, which looking forward to that, working with Kenny Albert and Brian Boucher. We were in there for St. Louis, and they were in that middle, I think 7 or 8 where they got points in a row. And, but I mean, I could kind of break down coach speak when Coach DeBoer was, you could tell that, that they were finding ways to win games, but they weren't really playing great. And look, without Miro Heiskanen, obviously, I mean, it's a different team. We understand that. But I mean, so I would be a little concerned with the way that Dallas is playing going into this series with Colorado. I mean, it's got 7-game series written all over it. Right now, I mean, I would give the slight edge in that series. I would give it to Colorado just because of the way that Dallas has played here for a long stretch. Now, are they going to get Tyler Seguin back? I mean, that would be a massive add. Heiskanen doesn't seem like, not so sure here moving forward. So, and look at there's obviously a boatload of pressure on Winnipeg to take the next step, right? Connor Hellebuck should be a finalist for MVP this year, in my opinion. We know he's going to win the Vezina Trophy, and rightfully so. But there is pressure there. But the one thing with Winnipeg, I would say, Sean and Danny, is that it seems like and not very often, that Mark Scheifele or Kyle Connor, and I know Nikolai Ehlers is a huge loss. I think it's a very underrated loss around the league, is that when those 2 big guys have had an off night or maybe gone stretches where they're not scoring at the normal pace, it seems like Scotty Arniel has the depth and the guys that have stepped up here. I mean, Cole Perfetti's had himself an outstanding season. Gabe Vilardi, obviously, he's been out for a while, but he's a huge add to their team to get him back. Iafallo's had a strong year. So I think that there's more offensive depth, and now can they step up in the playoffs? I think they can, but the question is, will they and can they? So look at it is as hard as a division as we've seen in a very, very long time, and pressure on in Winnipeg. Dallas had a unbelievable season, and maybe not the way they wanted to end. And then Colorado, I mean, think about the job that went on in Colorado, right? I mean, think about the team that is going into the playoffs compared to the team after the first, what, 30, 35 games, 30 games. I mean, it's just, it's just an amazing story, I think, with everything that's changed from the goaltenders and the players and a big move with Rantanen and everything that's gone on. So it's, I can make a case for any of the top three teams and say, yeah, I could see them, taking out, I could see Colorado taking out Dallas and then taking out Winnipeg if Winnipeg can get by St. Louis, or, I could see Dallas do the same, and then I could see Winnipeg, do the same. I think it's that close, and it does come down to one of those situations is what ends up being the so-called, turning point in the game or in the series, and that team will move on and the others will not.
What do you make of the potential talent lift and emotional lift you get if Gabriel Landeskog is back? Do you think that makes a big difference?
I think it just adds on to what they have started here, Danny. I think with all the moves and another new body, right? I mean, with everything that's gone on, and now obviously you got a guy that's got a boatload of experience, captain, winner, got a little bit of taste, in the American Hockey League, but I think at some point you could look over at Landeskog and use that as a rallying cry or a rallying push when you need it, because there's always going to be those ups and downs come playoff time. But just an amazing story, and look, if he can follow through, I mean, it's incredible that he's been gone this long, and here he is on the verge of looking like he's going to take part in the greatest playoffs in all of professional sports.
Last one, Eddie, for me. I want to ask you, as a 1,000-game player in this league, and you went to the playoffs, I believe, in your rookie year. Jeff Skinner's going to play for Edmonton in the playoffs this year. He signed there specifically for that reason. Yeah. He's played 1,077 regular season games and never got a sniff of the playoffs. Can you just put that in perspective as a player, what that must be like?
You wonder probably if it's ever going to happen. I mean, it's something that is, it's been with him his whole life, and wanting to make a run and playing in the NHL playoffs, and just thinking about what it would be like to, get to a Stanley Cup final. And, he's been a very good pro for a long period of time. And it's a tough racket. I mean, even though half the teams in the league make the playoffs, it's very difficult. And once you get in there, you need things to go your way. You need some luck. You need obviously you need great goaltending, as we've talked a lot about. And but I just think for a guy like Jeff Skinner, that's has paid his dues and has been around the block a few times and has made a lot of money. There's nothing like playing in the playoffs, and there's nothing like getting on a run and getting on a heater and playing in the playoffs, and that's why, I mean, I think most guys play to get that opportunity to play for the greatest trophy in all professional sports. And I wish him well, and I think that was part of the goal there, was to sign in Edmonton and look at a team that obviously went to the Stanley Cup final and was within one game of winning it all last year against Florida.
Eddie, last one from us here. It's involving in that series. You get the Oilers and the Kings. No one seems to be talking about the Los Angeles Kings. They've won 4 in a row. They have the best home record in the league. They're allowing under 2 goals per game at home. They're starting at home. They earned it. How good is this team? No one talks about them. Like, how good is this team? You get to see a lot of games out west. How good is this team?
Oh, I think they're very good. The home record, you're right, Danny, has been dominant. They play the same way, up 2, down 2. Like they're very consistent. Jim Hiller's done an amazing job. And look, let's just call it what it is. I mean, Todd McClellan laid the foundation there. Yes. And Jim Hiller did a couple of tweaks there, and You know, they made obviously, the big move, and they got some goaltending in their established goaltending with Darcy Kemper, obviously with the trade coming from Washington for Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's had himself a great year in Washington. But they've had balance. They've got a star. I mean, they got a couple of stars, obviously, in Kopitar and Kempe. Getting Drew Doughty back, obviously, has been just a huge add. So he's well rested. He's used to playing 28 minutes a night, and
Yeah.
he came back. Obviously in the Four Nations. So I mean, he is very well rested. The emergence of Quentin Byfield has been large. Like I look at him as being, if he can be the way that he has in the regular season into the playoffs, and I look at, does he need to score? Yeah, he needs to score. But I think if he can play the way that he has played, he can be that difference maker and help LA, in this series. So I think it's going to be an awesome series. I'm hoping to get out there at some point and do one of those games for TNT. But a very good team that hasn't got a lot of pub, but I think they're starting to get some momentum here going into the playoffs.
Eddie, thanks so much, man. This was fantastic. Gave us some time. You got Devils and Red Wings tonight, and then the playoffs. So appreciate it. Enjoy it. And we'll catch up with you along the way here. All right.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Danny. Great to be with you guys. Appreciate it.
Great stuff from Eddie Olczyk. Edzo's the best, Sean. Like, knows the league, knows it so well, played in it, coached in it. He's been doing the broadcasting for years. Love running into Eddie O in the buildings that we travel through. Always got a smile on his face. Always got a lot of knowledge.
He is the best, and it's great to pick his brain from all the different viewpoints, right? Especially when it comes to the playoffs. He's lived them, he's played in them, he's coached them. I believe that there's something there, right? And the last point we talked about, right, with Jeff Skinner playing in his first playoffs, he's played in 1,077 games. A lot of experience, and never experienced what he's about to experience. And I think you can only learn by doing, and Eddie's done it all.
Yeah, great stuff there. One thing we didn't talk with him about, well, a series that we didn't touch on really with him, was New Jersey and Carolina. And I wanted to go there here with this, Sean. So I was on in the ESPN broadcasters call the other day. PK Subban, Sean McDonough, Mark Messier, and Ray Ferraro were on that call. And I hadn't thought about this until this was brought up on that call. The pressure that's on the Carolina Hurricanes, okay? You'd think, okay, that's it's not near what it is on, say, Toronto, right? Or Winnipeg or Edmonton, all right? Or if you want to talk about Vegas, maybe. At least Vegas has won. Colorado's won. But Carolina, back in the playoffs yet again, home ice advantage yet again, and they don't change how they play, right? They went out and they got Rantanen. Didn't work. They couldn't get him signed. They traded him, right? They are the team that, even I remember Rod Brendamore, I was down there when Ovechkin was down there. He said, this is us. This is who we are. This is what we're about. We're about, for a little bit, and he wasn't blaming Rantanen, but for a little bit, we were about, one guy. That was the story here. That's not us. That's not who we're about. But they haven't gotten over the hump in the playoffs, right? I mean, ousted in the second round last year by the Rangers. They've gotten, since 2018, I think it is, to 2 conference finals under Rod Brendamore, but they haven't won a game in the conference final. They got swept both times, when they've reached it. They continue to be a really good team, but the pressure on them to finally get over that hump, maybe it's real. Maybe that is something. You're not going to be. Raleigh is not Toronto. All right, we all know that. Okay, in terms of all the attention and everything, but the Canes fans put a lot of attention, and they believe in this team, and they believe in them every year. Sean, do you buy into the notion that there's pressure on the Carolina Hurricanes to finally get over this hump and get this done, at least get to the conference final and win some games?
No, I don't buy that, because look, we've talked about all the sexy teams, right, in the East. Washington wins the conference, was in the President's Trophy conversation until last week. The Behemoths in Florida, Toronto wins the division. They're finally ready to ascend to the throne and actually be the center of hockey that they always claim to be. So there's 4 teams that are quote unquote better than the Carolina Hurricanes. So whatever they do is going to exceed expectations, I think, this year. Because you didn't
Yeah, you're right.
you didn't expect anything from them. When we started the year, you and thousands of other people were like, "Oh my God, look at the list of people who left the Carolina Hurricanes. There's no way they're going to be any good." And from day one, they went and they chased Washington and they finished comfortably in second. They play the exact way that they always have. They're dangerous, and they're going to be dangerous in the playoffs. And I won't be surprised if they're sitting in the conference final at all. But I don't think there's this unrelenting pressure weighing on them. I don't think Rod Brindamore lets that happen.
Yeah, and listen, I don't think there's massive changes if they don't do well in the playoffs. It's not like Rod Brindamore's job is riding on this, right? I mean, there's not going to be. They are who they are. It's just one of these years, are they going to be able to break through? And you're right. Like we wasn't very high on them at the start of the season. There were times during the season I wasn't very high on them. But through the course of the season, you're definitely look at them and say, yeah, that's a top 10 team, right? I mean, that's a really, really good hockey team. It's exactly what the Carolina Hurricanes you expect them to be, that type of team. And it's different this year, though, because in the past few years, haven't they been sort of like, that trendy pick? They've been a little bit, like, oh, this is the time. They're not a trendy pick. They're not a pick by many at all. Although I would tell you this right now, Sean, like, I will be very surprised if they don't get out of the first round at least. I do not like the way the New Jersey Devils look. I do not like the way the New Jersey Devils are playing down the stretch here. I hate the fact that the Devils don't have Jack Hughes, who's the game breaker, right? I think the Devils can be tough, but I don't think that they are going to have enough, to be honest with you, up against the relentless pressure that the Carolina Hurricanes are going to put on.
But do you like green eggs and ham?
I like Dr. Seuss.
Yeah. So, look, the Devils have not been great. They're going to get Dougie Hamilton back, it looks like, for game 1. Certainly going to help a little bit on their power play, but their power play is top 5. Their penalty kill is top 3. They're going to win the special teams battle, but the Carolina Hurricanes don't play special teams hockey.
No, they're 5-on-5, all 5-on-5 team. Yep.
Yeah, they don't take penalties. They're all like Jacob Slavin, except for maybe Seth Jarvis, who might take a penalty or two out of exuberance. But they're a very clean team. They're a very uneventful team when it comes to penalties and power play and penalty kill. So I think that really hurts the Devils. If they could have played a team that was more special teams orientated, I think they would have an advantage. Markstrom, I think, has been okay. And if he finds his groove, that makes it a lot difference, because the one thing that's always been the knock on Carolina is they can't score when it comes to big games, right? Like you talked about them being in the conference final and not winning a game. You think back to that conference final against Florida 2 years ago. They didn't win a game, but there was like 6 overtimes.
Yeah, but they didn't score.
I know, and they didn't score,
Yeah.
and that was the problem. So if Markstrom can get a little hot, it kind of changes the complexion of that series. But when I sit here and look at it now, and we'll probably do our predictions a little later in the show unless we go too long, I think, unless I have some sort of revelation in the next 10 minutes, I think I might have Carolina in the conference final again.
There you go. Hey, you know what? Let's skip to the good part. How about that? And we'll go right to our picks. We don't have a full first round schedule yet because we don't know it yet. But let's just skip to the really good part. Stanley Cup final. You just said you think you'll have Carolina in the Eastern Conference final. All right. Now, I want to put full disclosure out on this. We haven't done this. I have not sent my predictions anywhere yet. I have not written them down anywhere yet, and you have not either, Sean. These are off the top of our head, off the cuff, live on the podcast predictions. Give me your Stanley Cup final.
It's going to be a rematch of a couple of years ago. Tampa Bay Lightning, Colorado Avalanche.
Oh man, this is going to be a short debate. It's really going to be a short debate. I have to say the exact same thing. I really believe it's going to be exactly that again. So why do you think?
Well, we just spent all this time talking about it, right? And about the warts that all these teams, especially in the East, have. And I don't see them in Tampa Bay. Like, Vasilevsky's the best goalie in the East. Kucherov's the best player in the East. Hedman's a Norris Trophy defenseman. Gensel scores goals wherever he goes. That kid, he's on the path he's on right now. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. Hagel scores goals, and he doesn't even need a power play to do it. He's got 35 regular strength goals. That's an NHL record. That's bazonkers. They don't have a weakness. So that's why they're coming out of the East. And look, I've been high on Colorado, and I've kind of moved around on it. I don't like playoff Connor Hellebuck, so I'm not picking the Winnipeg Jets. Edmonton's too beat up, and I don't think they're deep enough. Dallas can't win because I think Colorado's going to win. And I think it's going to be Colorado and LA Kings in the Western Conference Final, and I just think Colorado has that something, right? And that something is winning. They've done it. They know it. And some of the guys on the Kings have done it, like Kopitar and Doughty, but I don't think it permeates through the organization like it once did.
So I agree with all of that. It's amazing because you're not, everything you said about Tampa Bay is not wrong, and I've been guilty of this too as well. Just forgetting to mention Braden Point, who's like incredible, right? I mean, he's just so good and so dominant of a player. But you go down the list of Tampa Bay Lightning players, he's the kind of guy that, you know, he's not flash. He's just all substance, and he's a 40-goal scorer every year and all that, right? But like, he's that good. But you know, we talk about Kucherov, we talk about Hedman, we talk about Vasilevsky, you talk about Hagel's 35 goals, the difference that Gensel's made. Braden Point's been the constant too. So, and their depth, I don't like that they don't have Bjorkstrand, at least for a little bit here. He's week to week. Maybe he comes back, maybe he doesn't. But I think that they drew a good matchup here against Florida, and we talked a lot about that, and I gave you my reasons on why I think that. I think the pressure could get to Toronto. I really do. I got to see it to believe that this team is different. I will, you know, I just don't know. It's like continuing to pick Buffalo to make the playoffs every year. Like, why, right? What's different? Okay. But just the way this Lightning team has laid out through the course of this season the season has gone for them. They've just continued to build and get better and better and better. So I really like them. Colorado, I agree with all the reasons that you talked about. I think Mackenzie Blackwood can have a real sneaky good playoffs. I think they won the Stanley Cup with Darcy Kemper, and Blackwood's a better goalie. Okay. So, in my opinion, I think he's just a better goalie, although hard to argue with Kemper in LA. He gets insulated a lot. I think it'll be Vegas that gets Colorado, that plays Colorado in the conference final. And I think Colorado wins that series. And I think too, like you said at the top, I think this is the year as well that Carolina gets back to the Eastern Conference. I don't like Washington enough. I just don't like Washington enough. I don't like New Jersey right now at all. And I'm not going to buy into Montreal or Columbus to be a team that can pull out this massive, incredible run, a la the Nashville Predators, you know, in 2017 and the Kings in 2012. I don't believe that they're going to have enough, either one of those teams, to do it. So it's Carolina, but I think Tampa Bay takes Carolina takes care of them pretty quick. To be honest with you, when it gets there, maybe Carolina wins a game. So I go Carolina. I go Tampa Bay and Colorado yet again. And I think it's the reverse this time. I think Tampa Bay wins the series. I think Tampa Bay is the Stanley Cup champs yet again.
So if that comes true, that's what, 6 years in a row that we'll be in Florida for the Stanley Cup final? Who would have thought that?
Are you complaining about it?
No.
No.
I'm saying Florida's not a hockey state, supposedly.
Oh, yeah, it is. It 100% is. Watch this series between the Lightning and Panthers, anybody who questions that, and see the passion in the building when that happens. Because it's a hockey state, big time right now. And rightfully so. They've had terrific hockey to watch. They've had amazing hockey to watch, and it's not just at the NHL level. They've had it to watch too, at in lower level, in the minor league levels too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And look, before we go, we've talked forever about the playoffs, and they start Saturday with a couple of games, and the schedule will be out soon. And then Sunday with the probably the rest of the slate, or most of the rest of the slate, and then every day 3 or 4 games. I can't wait. I'm leaving for Vegas on Friday. There's some people that said goodbye in the last week that we should acknowledge. And some of them haven't said goodbye yet, but will. And so at the top of my list is Marc-Andre Fleury, right? And he gets into the game last night. Good on John Hines. Like, if guys don't like playing for John Hines, they don't have any feelings, because that was really great what he did for Marc-Andre, especially because everybody thought Marc-Andre was going to start that game in Vancouver, and that was going to be his last game, and that was going to be the goodbye. And then they needed to win that game, and he went back to Gus. So, and then Gus obviously plays the last game, and once they had the point that they needed to advance, here comes Marc-Andre for all the bouquets, and now he gets to play Vegas, his former team, right? And that's going to be a great storyline. I mean, he's not going to play. If he plays, things are really bad for Minnesota at that point. But he's just one of the guys who's said goodbye, right? You think about Pat Maroon and what a great career he's had, and Alec Martinez, both from the Blackhawks, both calling it quits and having their moment at the United Center.
And Matt Martin.
Yeah.
And Matt Martin was, I think what happened with Matt Martin at UBS Arena, at the end of the game against the Washington Capitals on Tuesday night was just it just showed the pure class of this league. It showed how much respect players like Matt Martin, the no face shield Matt Martin, one of the few remaining players in the league that does not wear the shield, that the respect that they have, close to 1,000 games, grinding out close to 1,000-game career for Matt Martin. I just thought that was awesome that, everybody on the Washington Capitals gave him a handshake at the end of that game. This is not a star player. This is not a guy going to the Hall of Fame. This is just a guy who's grinded out a long NHL career, and there's a lot of respect for that around this league.
They all should have punched him.
I'll punch him in the face as they go by. He would
no,
have liked that, maybe.
Right in the sternum. They all should have gave him a punch right in the sternum. Way to go.
He might have liked it.
Enjoy your career. Enjoy your retirement.
Yeah.
So we're going to retire this show because it's time to get ready for the playoffs. There's a lot to write. There's a lot to post. And there's some traveling to do. You got to deal with the Rangers mess first, the cleanup day.
Yes.
And then you'll be off to the playoffs. And like I said, I leave Friday for Vegas, and we'll be doing daily reports from that Vegas-Minnesota series. And we'll be back next week, and the storylines will start to develop, and we'll spell them all out.
Just don't forget your microphone. How about that? So we can do the podcast.
Dude, I won't forget my microphone. And the greatest thing about next week is my dog will not be in my hotel room.
Hey, I got 2 of them. They were quiet for this one. So, listen, this was a lot of fun. The regular season just about over. We're not done yet, though. Still some things to iron out. Enjoy that. And as always, the podcast is brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip. Enjoy the hockey.